now doing. So I'm going to pass this over to Manji. I'm going to stop sharing. Manji, you're good to go.
Thank you, Jeff. This is Monji, the IFAS Extension agent in Southwest Florida. This is in collaboration with the following extension agents: Elisa, Amir, Anna, Daniel, Edwin, Jeff, Jessica, Madeline, Mark, Matt, and Yvette. As you all know, citrus trees are evergreen, do not become fully dormant, and cannot withstand temperature as low as those tolerated by deciduous trees. However, citrus trees can become acclimated to cool air temperatures that occur in winter. This acclimation induces some degree of dormancy known as quiescence. Recovery from cold damage depends largely on tree health. Weak trees that already show disease, insect damage, and nutrient deficiency symptoms, or that are heavily cropped, are usually the ones most severely damaged by freezing temperatures and the slowest to recover from freeze. The extent to which citrus trees can be freeze damaged depends on some factors and conditions. Factors responsible for freeze damage include minimum temperature, duration of freezing temperatures, and stage of tree acclimation. Susceptibility of trees to freezing temperatures can also be related to tree vigor, scion and rootstock, crop load, and growth conditions. Citrus freeze injury is caused by the formation of ice crystals in the intercellular spaces of plant tissue. Ice formation is usually accompanied by a rupture of the cell membrane and damage to the cell wall. Ice formation in leaves is diagnosed by dark water-soaked areas on the leaf surface. Completely frozen killed leaves or tissues within leaves appear bleached or tan to brown in color. Leaf drop within a few days indicates that the wood is likely not damaged or killed, while leaf retention on the twigs usually indicates wood kill. Wood damage can be checked by scraping the outer layer of bark. Green tissue, in most cases, indicates live wood, while brown tissue implies freeze-damaged dead wood. Ice formation may also occur in wood, particularly in young trees. Such splits may be extensive in larger trees, resulting in serious injury. Extensive bark damage may cause the limb to die and later break within several years after the freeze events. Minimum temperatures of 26 degrees will damage fully mature, hard enough leaves that have not received any acclimation. Leaves that have received extensive acclimation have been shown to survive temperatures as low as 20 degrees. Minimum temperatures of 30 degrees can significantly damage and harden new flush leaves. Oranges are usually damaged when the fruit are exposed to temperatures of 28 degrees or lower for 4 hours or more. As you know, the deeper the ice crystals form, the greater is the injury to the fruit. The frozen area will eventually dry out, leaving the damaged fruit somewhat hollow and lighter in weight. Concerning juice loss occurs over a period of several weeks. Fruits severely injured during the freeze may drop quickly or may drop more slowly over time. For example, apples and grapefruit are particularly susceptible to fruit drop, while oranges often remain on the tree for longer periods. The natural reaction after a freeze is to do something right away. However, there is very little that can be done at that time because it is impossible to determine the full extent of freeze damage. After a freeze, no pruning should be done until the spring or during the winter. In early spring, freeze damaged trees often produce new growth and soon die back. Sufficient time should be given to the drying back to cease and for the new healthy flush to take place and fully expand. Delaying pruning to the proper time will save money. Pruning cuts should be made into living wood. Trees suffering 10 to 20% or 50% wood loss should receive a regular nutritional program since fruit will be produced that year. However, trees suffering 50% or more would loss most likely will not produce fruit that year, and the nutritional program should be reduced according to the damage. Fertilization of freeze-damaged trees should be reduced until the trees are back to their original canopy size and foliage density. Fertilizer should be applied more frequently, but rates should be reduced in proportion to the amount of tree damage and to the expected crop load. An effective weed control program implemented after the freeze is essential. It is essential to ensure rapid recovery from freeze damage because weeds will compete heavily with the trees for available water, nutrients, and light. Growers should remember to the screen is not showing well. Growers should remember that twigs and branches may continue to die for a period of several months to a couple of years following a severe freeze. This is due to latent damage to the bark and wood that may not be visible soon after a freeze. A wait and see approach is best applied immediately following a freeze. For more information and details, go to this web page. Thank you.
Thank you, Manji. Very nice job. Manji is a citrus expert, so if you have citrus questions at the end, you can relate it to the post-freeze, you can ask them. Manji, if you would stop sharing, then I'll go ahead and start.
Are you okay?
No, still see your screen. Maybe it's at the top, maybe stop share, or at the bottom. Okay, that looks good. All right, I'm going to talk about post-freeze considerations for tropical fruit trees. And I want to thank Amir for some pictures and Jonathan for doing the yeoman's work on this PowerPoint. So the factors affecting susceptibility and recovery of tropical fruit crops to cold damage. These are the things that would happen ahead of time that would cause the trees to have cold damage or worse, freeze damage. Okay, genetic predisposition, we'll talk about that. Site selection, elevation has a lot to do with that. If you're near a lake or an ocean, if you're on the south side of a lake, you're in better shape. The plant vigor and health, plant stage of growth, tree age or size, predisposing environmental stresses. And we'll talk about these. Cultural practices, if you're fertilizing too much, you're pruning going into the winter, you're not irrigating enough, so your trees are drought stressed, and how long and the depth and duration of the cold temperatures and the number of freezing events. We had 2 nights back to back of very cold weather. So genetic predisposition, you have something like a papaya versus an avocado. An avocado can take much lower temperatures than a papaya. Site selection, this is something, if you're going to establish a new grove, you really need to think about it, because if you're putting your avocados or your mangoes somewhere where it could freeze, or let's say you're in a low areas definitely get colder. You want to think about that before you establish your grove. Plant vigor and health. Obviously, a healthy tree can withstand and recover better than one that's not healthy. So you always want to keep your trees healthy, rule of thumb. The plant stage of growth. If your tree is not putting out new leaves, it's got a better chance. If it's sort of dormant, which a lot of tropical fruit trees are in the dry season or the winter. Tree age or size. The older the tree, the bigger the tree, the better it can withstand cold temperatures. And then environmental stresses. If your trees were stressed ahead of time, flood stress or drought stress, they're going to have much harder time with the freeze. High fertilizer rates or poor timing. If you're fertilizing going into the winter, or what we call the dry season down here, you're going to push out new growth, and that's going to make it more susceptible to cold damage. Timing of your pruning, again, you do it close to going into the winter, you're going to put out that new growth, and things like avocados, mangoes, lychee, longan, they're all getting ready to flower anyway, so that pruning is a big no-no because you'll be breaking up the flowering cycle. Drought stress, problem. How long the cold is, how low the temperature is, the number of events. We had, like I said, we had those 2 days back to back, but that doesn't mean in a month from now, or not a month from now, but in a week or 2 weeks from now, we might not get another one. Then the improper use or breakdown of cold protection system. We talk a lot about using irrigation for cold protection, but that first night was what's called an effective freeze, meaning it was very windy. So usually the sprinklers don't work on those windy nights. So if you put on your sprinklers and it was very windy, not great. Potential for increased damage. So the common freeze and damage plant symptoms, excuse me. The leaves, you're going to have leaf wilting, like Manji said, water soaking, browning. He showed some good pictures of that. Leaves are going to die, and if they hang on the stem, that's really a bad sign, because if they drop off, that's better, because the plant is actually doing something to protect itself or to heal itself. Water soaking on the flowers and the fruit, browning, shriveling, and drop. So here's some pictures, some older pictures of leaf damage and fruit damage. Carambola, that's an avocado top left, carambola top right, carambola bottom right, and looks like a carambola top or bottom left as well. Then these pictures are from Amir, and they're just taken in St. Lucie County. This was taken after the first night of cold weather. And on the left, you see a lychee. You see the very quickly has those dead tips. Mango on the right, it's got the browning. The flowers are all damaged. A nona on the left. A nona is more cold sensitive than a mango or a lychee. So it probably is not going to do as well. Another mango on the right looks worse than the last one. You see the ice crystals down below. Looks like mango there, or a lychee. Hard to tell. I think it's a lychee because I don't see flowers. And then in the background, you see an annona, and on the right, another lychee. And there you see a different sort of, it's not brown, or it's not fried. It's sort of greenish black. You can also get limb breakage when you have that heavy load of ice. Even if you're irrigating for cold protection, you can put that heavy ice on your tree and you get the limb breakage. That's probably better than not doing cold protection, because at least you're keeping the bottom of the tree alive and you can prune off that broken wood. And bananas, they show very bad, or they get cold damage pretty badly. But the good thing about them is they have the pseudostems underground and they'll be able to come back from that. So plant symptoms, Manji mentioned some of these. The wood, you have twig, limb, and trunk discoloration, especially when you cut it open. You see water soaking, browning, death of the wood. Major limbs, you might see bark splitting, where the bark just splits open. Sap can come out and you can have death. So pruning afterwards. Do not prune immediately after the freeze. This is what we want you to take home, because those other things I told you, it's kind of too late for that. But for this, it's after the freeze. So don't prune. You're going to see, you saw those pictures, you would think right away, I want to prune all that off to get rid of all that dead wood and dead leaves. But you don't know what's dead. Some things may die back. Like I've seen things here in the Grove at Extension, day 2, they don't look as good as they did day 1. So a week or 2 from now, they might look worse. Another reason not to prune right away, there could be another freeze. So those dead leaves that we saw in those pictures from Amir, they could protect the rest of the tree. It's going to give some barrier for heat loss. And if you prune right away, you might not get all of the dead wood, and you'll have to prune again later because you don't know exactly how far back it's going to die. Wait at least 2 months before pruning, and then prune to live wood. Irrigation. So that was pruning. This is irrigation. Little leaf damage, you can irrigate normally. Groves or trees with moderate leaf damage, you have less leaf area, so irrigation rates should be reduced. They're not growing like normal. They're not letting out water through the leaves like normal, so we need to reduce the rates. If they have little to no leaves, they should not be irrigated until new shoots and leaf growth appears. Because if you do it when they have no leaves, that can rot the roots. Because again, they can't really take up that water and let it out through the leaves like they normally would. So post-freeze tree care with fertilization. So we talked about pruning, irrigation. Finally, I'm going to talk about fertilization. It's the same kind of idea. The more damage you have, the less you're going to do, just like the irrigation. So little leaf and wood damage, you're going to go at a normal rate and frequency. If you have moderate leaf loss, you're going to go at a reduced rate. And groves or trees with complete leaf loss should be fertilized frequently at higher rates when the new growth begins, not normally when you would normally do it. And if we have an early season freeze, it may be best to wait until the warmer weather to fertilize. So thank you for your time. We'll have questions at the end. Again, I'm going to pass this to our next speaker, which is Yvette Gooddeal.
Okay. Oh, there. Can you see my, can you see the FAWN site?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you, Jeff. So I'm going to share a bit about the FAWN site. I know speaking with our growers, they, it helps to be able to track the temperature and the weather in general, especially when we have extreme events like this. And, they're looking for something other than the normal tools that exist. And so we're bringing forward and sharing the FAWN tool. And Rick Lesher, who is lead on the FAWN project, is also on the call on the Zoom, so he can chime in, and I'll ask him to get into some of the irrigation pieces. But I'll start here on the homepage. So you can see this is a map of some of the stations that are in the FAWN system. And so this is just an easy kind of a dashboard place to look at some of the information. Temperature, dew point temperature, wind speeds, and things like that. This is a nice way to get a statewide view. You can also click on a station that you're interested in and see a little more data. Okay, it worked earlier. Maybe my computer is just slow. There we go. So this is the Yeehaw Junction station, and there's like a dashboard here of some of the information that's current at that time. So if you were like tracking things at night, over the course of an event, this would be something you could use. And then you can also click on the more to get an expanded information with the forecast, and then you have all these other tools over here. So, but I also wanted to just take you through the cold protection toolkit. And like I said, I'll start with that, and then Rick can take over. So there's a video that you can watch that steps you through it. There's also a blog that Rick and I wrote that I'll put the link to that in the chat that kind of steps you through. You can set a critical temperature the guide that they have does not specifically speak to tropical fruit trees. We may be able to provide that information to you as a follow-up to this, but it does give you guidance for critical temperatures for other crops. And so you could set that here, and then that tailors some of your results in the other pieces of the cold protection toolkit. There's also a freeze alert tool. There is a cost to this. And I have not tried it myself, but this is a way to get alerts on the data that you need specific to your area. Okay, so here's another, the National Weather Service graphical forecast. I know for me, usually I get those National Weather Service announcements for my specific area, but if I want to look at, it's more of a broad area. If I wanted to look at a specific weather station across the area that I'm concerned with, and many of y'all operate across multiple counties, this may be a valuable tool. So one thing to be aware of, you might look at this and think, oh, there isn't a station where I need it, never mind. But like you can see here, it just popped up. If you scroll, use the control and scroll, you can zoom in and out. And so when you do that, more stations will appear on the map. And so, like, here's this station here. So I clicked on it, and that's Port Mayaca. So I can scroll down here and, okay. I think my computer is just slow. Maybe it's the station I chose. I tried this earlier on a different station and it did work, so I apologize. Let's try here. Okay, yeah, so this is Palm City. And you can see there's FAWN stations, grower stations, and these fruit frost stations. So whichever one you choose, they all have this data, and starts, you know, right here with the current date, and then you can scroll over to the right 7 days ahead, which is really nice to have this detailed information. So like before the other freeze event, I was sending out screenshots where you could see the temperature dropping down on nights in the future as that cold front was approaching. So it was a nice tool to plan out. And you can also see the winds and the wind gusts. Let's see if, yeah, here's some wind gusts here, and then rain as well. So that's helpful to have, as well as not only the real-time data that I showed on the home screen, but also this forecast tool to use to forecast out. So I think that is all that I wanted to show here. So Rick, would you like, I'll stop sharing and let you share your screen and show the components you'd like to talk about.
All right, let's let me see if I can share here. There we go. That should be it.
Yep.
Great. Okay, thanks Yvette and Jeff for inviting me to participate in the meeting. I really appreciate it. Certainly the last few days have been, I'm probably more so for all of you, but even for us, a little bit stressful because we want to make sure everything's working properly. And so we've been paying attention closely to the stations and all. Had a hiccup or two, which thankfully we were able to get resolved pretty quickly. So we're glad about that. So Yvette was showing you, so there are two different ways to get to the cold protection tools. One is the way that Yvette was showing you, which is through the menu at the top. or you can go and you can select the individual tools. The other way that you may have noticed before was from what we call the station page. So what I'll do is go in and show you that way. That's just another way, and especially for the sake of this demonstration, is a much easier way, quicker way to show you those tools. So you remember this page from the other station over here on the left, you can select cold protection, and then the page will populate all of those tools that Yvette was showing you as they apply to this station. And so there's two different ways you can get to the toolkit. If you want to jump around from station to station, you can go through the menu at the top. If you want to zoom in on one particular station, this might be an easier way to do that. So you still set your critical temperature at the top here. And yeah, we would love to, Yvette and Jeff, work with you to provide critical temperatures for different crops. So we can, certainly we're happy to collaborate and to add that information to our website, because we want to be as useful to as many different types of crops as we can. The good thing about the freeze protection, though, is once you know that critical temperature, the tools apply across the board. So from that standpoint, they're not crop specific, but you do need to know that critical minimum. So at the top here, you see the graphical forecast, which Yvette just showed you. It kind of gives you an idea over the next few days, what's the outlook. And so the cold protection toolkit is designed to kind of start with the big picture, 7-day forecast, and zoom down to individual cold events. So once you do that, from the minimum overnight temperature on down, you're kind of looking at individual cold events. And so if you look at the forecast here and it says, well, Thursday, it's supposed to be cold. Thursday, you would come on down and start looking at the individual tools. The minimum overnight temperature tool estimates the overnight minimum using the Brunt equation. And there's nothing there right this minute because it uses the temperature and dew point at sunset. So in order to eliminate any confusion, we just remove the table during the day and only show it when the most current measurements are available. So if you went there and there's a table, you wouldn't know, well, was that for last night or is that for tonight? So we just kind of tried to eliminate that confusion. So if you go back after 6 o'clock tonight, you'll see a table there that will show you those values. Moving on down, the forecast tracker is a tool that puts the actual temperature at the FAWN station in black and the forecasted temperature in blue. And then you can also, your critical temperature line also appears on this as well. This is a very simple tool that was developed to let you essentially evaluate the forecast as the night goes along. Because if the forecast is close to your critical minimum, but you see that the actual temperature is, kind of deviating from that one way or the other, it's going to give you a lot of useful information. If you see the temperature in this case is trending above the forecast and you see that happening during the night, well, that might give you some information that you might not need to be, not saying that you don't need to be concerned about implementing freeze protection measures, but it's a piece of information that can be useful. If you notice temperatures that are warmer than the forecast or temperatures that are lower than the forecast, that also can be very useful. And then with your critical temperature line on there, you can look and see, okay, well, when do they expect the forecast to be close to my critical levels? And then we also put a table down here with the actual values. Some people like to look at the quick graph. Some people like to look at the numbers. So we provide both of those for you. And then I want to mention below each tool is more information about that tool. kind of how it was developed and what was the thinking behind us doing that and how is it useful. The irrigation risk uses the wet bulb temperature to give you what we call evaporative cooling potential. So if you have a wet plant surface and the air is dry and windy, that can drive the temperature down to the wet bulb. If the wet bulb is significantly lower than your critical temperature, you could actually cause further damage by activating your irrigation system. And so we give you that risk using the temperature, the wet bulb, and the wind speed for the current measurements here, but then also with the forecasted values down in this table. So in addition to getting the current risk, you can also look at the forecasted risk as well. And then finally, we give you a safe cutoff temperature if you decide to run your irrigation system. It uses basically the same information as this evaporative cooling potential to give you like what's a safe cutoff temperature without risking further damage. And so we give you that at the very bottom here. So it's just kind of a step-by-step process to help you, what we hope is make better decisions with your having to use your irrigation system for freeze protection. And that's it for me, unless Yvette, you want me to share
No, I
anything
think
else.
that's great. Thank you, Rick.
Let's see. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really informative, and I think the
Okay.
growers really appreciate that. So thank you, Rick. Our next speaker is Jessica Riles. And we also have Krista Court, Beverly Velasquez, and Amy Barton that might be jumping in. So you're going to get a lot of information here from a lot of experts.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for putting this together. So I'm Jessica Riles. I'm an extension agent down in Collier County. I'm going to talk about a little bit about the programs that are available at this time, some reporting timelines you should be aware of, and just some general ideas that you should be aware of, as well as the IFAS disaster assessment survey. So even if you don't need disaster recovery assistance from this past freeze event, these are programs and resources that you should be aware of for future disasters, because you're Florida farmers and we're going to run into flooding, hurricanes, wildfires, freezes, wind events, all of those things. So you can also participate in coming years if this is not something that you need to take advantage of today. So the first kind of big take home, and I'm going to be talking big picture here, and we have some experts on the call to answer some more specific questions for you. But the big thing is you want to report your damages and losses to Farm Service Agency, your insurance representative, whoever that person is that needs to know, but for sure those two folks. So you want to contact your local FSA office. Many of you are in touch with those folks, but I know that sometimes there's growers that maybe you want to fly under the radar a little bit and are not registered with FSA. The way you can find your local USDA Farm Service Agency Center is through the USDA website. So this is what it looks like. You can just put in the state, your county, and it will show you a list of your local representatives. So again, this is critical to report even if the damage is not immediately visible. And oftentimes with tropical fruit crops or citrus, and even in vegetables, I mean, you've heard from the folks today that it's not immediately visible what your damages are. But what you can see is important to document. It's important to keep accurate records of any type of losses from this cold weather event or any other event. So we were talking about timestamp photos, videos. You can also do purchase records if you're having to purchase freeze cloths and things like that. Any production records you have. bank or loan documents, third-party certifications, all of that information should be documented somewhere and shared as soon as possible. I've actually seen a lot of conflicting information online about this, but our state of Florida FSA says do not start cleanup. I know that it's very challenging, and I've even heard of some folks in Immokalee that have already started planting from this past freeze event because, you don't want to leave things lying around. You don't want disease to spread. I know, you want to do something about what you see. But for two reasons, it may be important not to start cleaning up right away. One is in case your insurance adjuster or, someone needs to come out and take a look with their eyes and see what's going on. And then also like Manji and Jeff alluded to that, you don't want to start maybe, especially when it comes to tropical fruit trees, doing too much because you don't fully know what the extent of that damage might be and maybe what's around the corner next week or the week after. The important thing too about documenting, so it's important to reach out, it's important to send an email over to FSA, but you really want to include as much information as possible to them. So what crops are damaged, how much acreage, any type of acreage reports that you can share, specific weather events. So put in there, what you're addressing, this latest freeze here in end of January, beginning of February 2026. If you have weather data that you can provide by a reputable source, so you just heard FAWN, that's one great example, or even if there's producers that are near you or in adjacent fields or areas that can provide valuable and reputable, I should say, information, that's good. Again, any harvest records, if you were having to harvest things ahead of time for a freeze, any input receipts, insurance information, again, if you have that, and then, really just as much detail as possible. So if you have crop insurance, you're going to basically have to report that to your local farm service agency as soon as possible. So if you have protection through the federal crop insurance or NAP, which is the non-insurance crop disaster assistance program, you want to contact FSA really within 72 hours of discovering your damage. So be sure to follow up in writing. That's always a good idea. 15 days is the guidance, but really 72 hours is a critical point. I know that's not a lot of time, but hopefully that gives you enough time to kind of get out there and document what you need. If you do have NAP coverage, you want to file a notice of loss. That's also called the form CCC 576 within 15 days of that loss becoming apparent. And then that's except for hand harvested crops, which should be reported within 72 hours. So again, I know it's a little bit challenging because you don't fully know the extent of it, but as you are discovering things, you want to report that. Currently through FSA, there's the Tree Assistance Program, also known as TAP. That's a program to be aware of. It's administered by FSA, and it offers financial support to growers, grove owners and managers and nursery tree growers who experience losses due to natural disasters like this one. And it really helps cover the cost of replanting or rehabbing eligible trees, bushes, vines, that produce annual crops and that have been damaged or destroyed. It's very specific about the eligibility. So it's not just, again, it might take you some time to kind of really see what trees are actually dead and which ones have just dropped their leaves but are going to be able to come back from it. But it's an important program for helping producers recover from these types of events. And again, if you want more specific information about this program, you're going to want to reach out to your local FSA representative. Again, this is for commercial purposes, and you're going to want to provide verifiable documents of the losses to make sure that it meets the programs. And then you do your application of payment. So that has to be submitted within 90 calendar days of the disaster event or when the loss is apparent. And I put a link in here, and I don't know if Jeff is going to be sharing these slides, but you can click on that link and learn more. Disaster declarations are also something to be aware of. So FSA has a large variety of loans that are available to producers, including emergency loans. And these types of programs are actually triggered by disaster declarations. And operating loans are also could be included in that, of providing credit needs for producers. But this all sort of hinges on that disaster declaration. This is done through the state government. It can also be, come down through the federal government, through the state government as well. But these official designations are usually, every county is called out. So it's on a county by county basis. So hopefully, if and when that disaster declaration happens for our latest event here, you'll have to look out for your county and make sure that you're covered under that. These loans that are offered under these types of programs can be used to replace essential property, purchase inputs like livestock, equipment, feed, seed, refinancing your farm related debts, and other needs. So they're much more broad. FSA, the state government, is now working on those storm reports for this current freeze. Believe it or not, they're still working on reports from previous disasters that we have. So these things do take a little bit of time. Our state government and our agricultural agencies have been really very supportive of producers. So, everybody is moving in that direction. It just takes a lot of agencies and a lot of people to make this happen. But the important and the key part here is you. So it's the reporting on the ground that confirms the damage that then FSA, local county governments, state governments can petition the government to basically have that governor disaster declaration happen. So it's very important that you share what you're seeing. This is just a kind of a disaster assistance at a glance brochure. You can find this on the USDA website. And this goes beyond just freeze events, right? We're talking hurricanes and so on and so forth. So when you get a chance, take a look at this so you kind of see what programs could be available to you. The USDA also has a disaster assistance discovery tool. So you can basically go on here, and it's a very simple process. You kind of go step by step. Did you suffer a loss or damage? Yes. And then what type of damage? What were your impacts? When did it happen? And where? And it'll spit out some resources for you to take a look at. So I encourage everybody to go on that USDA website and take a look. If you are not enrolled in FSA, you're not eligible to participate in some of these programs. So maybe in the future, if you're a bona fide agricultural operation, you're doing commercial production, you may want to connect with your local FSA office. And there's some steps that you can focus on if you want to prepare for your visit. You'll need proof of identity. You'll need a copy of your deed, your survey plat or lease agreement, however that's set up. And then additional reports that you'll need to kind of get yourself situated, set up as a farm within the state of Florida so that you can be eligible for some of these program assistance. And again, this is just a way to find your local service agency. So I put in Florida, I put in my county, which is Collier County, and it pops up the Fort Myers Service Center, which services Lee and Collier County. So those are going to be some of your contacts. So put your information in there to find your folks. And then we also I saw Krista, I saw you're on if you want to jump in. We also have the IFAS agricultural losses and damages survey from Dr. Krista Court and her team. So I'll give you a couple minutes to talk more about that.
Sure. Thanks, Jessica. Happy to be involved here and be able to make it. We released our agriculture damage and loss assessment that we typically do for hurricane season. So you may have seen those over the past maybe 6 or 7 years come out, but that we have adjusted it to be appropriate for this freeze event. And it says freeze events because we did have 4 different date ranges that have different parts of the state have been impacted by freeze or hard freeze. So it does allow you to respond for, we're going to do cumulative effects across all of the ones that you were impacted by, but it lets you respond to which ones impacted your operation. I put the link in the chat box to the web page for this particular assessment where you will find all of the relevant information, the flyer, a link to the survey. Jessica gave a very good overview on the protocols that are very specific and very mandated related to how agricultural disasters are declared. This assessment is sort of informally contributing to those processes in the sense that I sit on the state emergency board as a non-voting member for the FSA to contribute some additional information when we have it. But those reports to FSA are extremely important for informing that disaster declaration process. One thing that our assessment does that the FSA does not do is sort of aggregate all of the information that comes in to try to communicate statewide production losses from a particular disaster, and then also try to drill down how that's distributed across commodity groups and across geography, so that, again, that can inform any of those decisions that might need to be made later about disaster relief or disaster response and recovery in the long run. Jessica, if you'll go to the next slide, I think we have also yes. So this survey flyer has a couple of the frequently asked questions. One of the things that we like to point out is what you'll be asked for. We try to make it as short as possible and only collect what we really need first and then ask for some additional information. So the most important information is that estimates on total crop, livestock, or aquaculture acreages or numbers of animals. And then we're looking for the percentages of those that were affected by the disaster and then that were impacted in terms of production losses. It should take, depending on how complex your operation is, about 20 minutes to complete the survey. And one more slide. And then we put this together, this sort of 5 steps to be ready to do these assessments or make these reports. A lot of the stuff that Jessica just talked about is on there. Again, we do encourage everybody to report to the FSA in addition to completing our assessment, because they're used for very different things, but both are informing those processes related to disaster declaration, response, and recovery. And there's my contact information if anybody has questions or has others that need to have more questions about this. When you try to share it with others, they are welcome to reach out to me by phone or by email.
Great, thank you, Krista. So you may have also seen this morning, Commissioner Wilton Simpson announced that ag producers can apply for hurricane disaster relief. So again, you can see how these things can get backlogged, but he also asked the federal government to use this approved program to immediately fund some of the relief that's happening with these 2026 storms. So, you know, fingers crossed, we'll see what happens. Again, this is all part of the process of moving in that direction of hopefully getting some sort of disaster declaration. So there are more programs available to you. So the key takeaways here, most important steps for you as producers is early communication, whether that's your insurance agent, the local FSA office. You can even reach out to us at IFAS Extension. Many of us have already been out in the field. We're documenting and we'll be sending information on what we see over to FSA and our colleagues over up in Extension, up in Gainesville. Even if the full extent isn't quite known yet, that's okay. We got to get the ball rolling. FSA and IFAS, so Krista and her team, they're collecting data on economic impacts, even though they're different things, like Krista just talked about. They are relevant and they're complementary to each other because they're showing a bigger picture and a bigger narrative of what's actually happening on the ground to the people that are making the decisions and passing these laws and those in the legislature. So again, reporting on the ground confirms the damage, confirms to our leaders of what's actually happening and going on in agriculture. So I will stop here, and if our friends over at FSA want to jump in and say anything, please feel free, or if anybody has questions.
Thank you, Jessica. You did a fantastic job covering both of these key programs, NAP and TAP. My name is Beverly Velasquez. I'm the Ag Program Specialist here at the Florida State Office. We also cover Virgin Islands as well. And I just wanted to go back and highlight some key differences between NAP, the Non-Insured Crop Assistance Program, and then TAP, the Tree Assistance Program. And you also touched briefly on the disaster designation. And you said it was on a county by county basis, which is basically when a crop in the county has sustained losses exceeding 30%. That's when it activates eligibility for certain disaster related programs, and that would go into NAP and TAP. So NAP specifically, it's more so on production losses. So think yield losses on crops that aren't covered by federal crop insurance. So as far as producers, the key reporting deadlines, like you mentioned, the 72 hours for hand harvested crops, or within 15 calendar days, either the earlier of when the disaster occurred or when the damage itself becomes apparent, or the normal harvest date, whichever one is earlier. But NAP itself would be most appropriate if you're a producer, your trees survive the freeze and you have a measurable fruit production loss. Now we go the loss in yield. So TAP itself would be, like you mentioned, rehab or replanting trees that were lost, in this case, the freeze. So tree deaths in excess of 15% mortality after the normal mortality adjustment. So we are looking at TAP as like the tree itself as a long-term asset. So as far as documenting, it's really important to document down to the stand level. And a stand itself is defined as a contiguous block of the same crop type. In this case, for example, a citrus block or peach orchard planting. So be prepared to report the total number of trees in the stand, total number of trees dead, number of trees that may qualify for rehabilitation instead of complete replacement, and if the losses may or may not exceed that 15% threshold. And we're going to have loss adjusters go out and assess the damage. So that's why it's very important not to clean up. We really need to know how much damage you had. And they're going to be conducting a field visit, assessing the disaster event, the date, the crop type, stand identification, trees lost, and then the trees total in the stand. But very important, don't wait. Contact FSA, us here immediately. Go to your local county office if you notice any losses. Even if you're not sure of the full scope of the damage, just go ahead and reach out to your local county office and we'll try to help you out. Thank you. Any questions?
Great, thank you for that additional detail. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. Before we get to questions and the survey, Rick had one more thing he wanted to show everybody. Since we have his expertise here, I'm going to let him jump back in. The other thing I want to say is in the chat, there's a whole lot of really good things that are popping up there. So if you're not paying attention to the chat, take a peek and download some of that stuff that's there.
Okay, it was mentioned in the chat to about the report generator for getting archive data, and then how many hours the site was below freezing or a temperature. So I wanted to just quickly show you how to access those, just take a couple of minutes. Since it's cold, I'll go over the air temperature threshold, as we call it, first. Both of these ways are in data access. That's any archived data that we have is going to be through data access. The first one here, air temperature threshold, it lets you select a site and then a date range and then a temperature threshold, and you can do above or below a whatever temperature you want. And then the tool will return the number of hours the site was above or below that temperature. And you can also do a range as well. And you can look at that on the screen, or you can download it in spreadsheet format. And so that's quickly how to access that. Going back, the report generator is to just download any of the data from our stations, the raw data. And as you can see, the interface is pretty much identical to the air temperature threshold. You select a site. Do you want all the observations, or do you want some averages, the date range, and then the parameter that you want to download? And again, you can look at it on the screen, or you can download in spreadsheet format to do some of your own analysis. And that's quickly how to get to those. If you want so real quickly, the report generator has some built-in restrictions because we don't want somebody going in and say, hey, I want 10 years worth of 15-minute temperatures from some FAWN station, because it does everything in real time. And that would take a really long time for the server to put all that together. And if enough people are doing that, it could slow things down and cause server issues. So the report generator is generally for smaller amounts, like maybe a month or a few months. If you need like years worth of data, then go down here to these links, and you can look at some spreadsheets where we just put years worth of data in spreadsheets from each station. And then if you are a programmer, or if you have access to a programmer and you want to do data in real time, the data feeds let you do that. So that's really quickly how to do that.
Thanks again, Rick. Great info. And now our next thing is we're going to do the survey, very short survey. Edwin, if you could put that link in the chat, that would be great. Guys, just click on that. Very quick. I think it's like 6-7 questions. It's coming up, I'm sure. Edwin. There it is. Thank you so much, Edwin. So if you guys could click on that. The first link is the survey, and the second link is a lot of information Edwin put together that will help you guys with a lot of the things we talked about today. So if you could click on that, just take that real fast, and then we'll do our questions. And thank you guys so much for being here. So I'm sure you're all done with the survey by now. There it is again. So if you have questions for any of our panelists, you can put them in the chat and I'll read them out. Patricia asked, can OTC treatment help trees be stronger during freezes? I'll admit I don't know what OTC means. So maybe someone else does, or maybe Patricia, you can.
I think she means over the counter, maybe.
Don't know. Patricia, if you want to expand on that. You stumped us right from the start. Alyssa knows. Anybody know about that? I don't know. Jean knows. Alyssa knows.
Maybe she's talking about tetracycline injection
Yes.
or greening.
What do you think, Manji?
The work has not been done yet.
Okay. The work has not been done yet, Patricia. Thank you for the question and stumping the heck out of me. Okay, as you guys are doing your survey, we'll keep going with the questions. Alessandra asks, she's in the garden. Is there a way to receive all the links in the chat by email? I'm doing AI is recording this, like writing it down, so I think it will be there, so I can email it out. And Gene McAvoy, who is a huge expert, says his observations recently appear to suggest this might be true. Edwin, who works with citrus, he's an extension agent, says, but HOB infected trees may be weaker. Gabriel asked for the email notes transcript. Yes, it's being taken. This is also being recorded, remember? So it'll be on YouTube hopefully by Friday. I try to get it up pretty quick. And it'll be on the Miami-Dade Extension page on YouTube, on the channel. So you can always find it there. So any other questions before we adjourn? All right. Patricia says, maybe I missed it. Will the current block grant for citrus that will open soon cover freeze damage? Another citrus question for the citrus experts. I'll read it again. Will the current block grant for citrus that will open soon cover freeze damage?
I don't know if our FSA friends are still on. The announcement that we recently got, I think we just got it this morning. I'm just pulling it up now. It was the 600 million hurricane disaster relief. So that was the block grant here. I'll put it in the chat. I think the commissioner was requesting that that be used as a program to immediately fund relief for this current ice storm. But I don't know about the citrus one.
Thank you. Gene has a really nice post in the chat. If you wish to dispute insurance claims following protocols, it's important to see, and he has a link, Florida Fruit Trees Loss Adjustment Standards Handbook. He says he physically walked over 39,000 acres after the last freeze and helped growers get over $35 million. Gene was a champion, award-winning extension agent. And guys, while we still have the chat open, remember, scroll back, get everything you can out of there. There's some PDFs that we put in there that will be very helpful. A lot of links that you can click on, copy, paste. Okay, if we don't have any more questions, I really want to thank all the agents and the USDA and the FSA and Rick and Krista Court, who got this all together so quickly. Want to thank you guys. I want to thank the people that attended. Hope you had some good information. So I think we're going to end it. So guys, have a good rest of your day. And thanks again for coming.
Thank you.
Jessica, quick question. Somebody put, I don't have crop insurance. Can I still apply for FSA?
Hey, Jess. Yeah, so Farm Service Agency is kind of the umbrella organization through the USDA. So you can still register the farm through FSA, and then you're eligible for the programs.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Thanks again.